We're at the end of Hebrews chapter 10. For the last 2 weeks, we have watched the writer of the book of Hebrews become very stern. I would put the word stern in as his warning about what happens if we walk away from this life that we have been given in Christ. And so if you remember the entire book of Hebrews, I've said this over and over and over again, but if you ever lose sight of the overall picture of the book of Hebrews, none of this really makes sense or doesn't fit together. The entire book of Hebrews is about trying to encourage people not to give up. And he uses all kinds of arguments with the people about why they shouldn't give up. You know, Jesus is better than angels, and Jesus is better than Moses, and Jesus is better than, he just keeps going and going and going. Abraham and Melchizedek, and he just, why would you leave something so good? But then in Hebrews chapter 10, he finally says, now, just stop, wait a minute. If you do walk away, after you've received this great knowledge of Jesus Christ, after you receive this grace of God that comes through Jesus, if you do walk away, let me show you how serious it is. And he uses that language like, you're trotting underfoot the Son of Man, and you're doing despite to the Spirit of grace. And we spend a lot of time talking about how God looks at giving us a special gift, and we just set it aside, and he doesn't look at that with favor, and so it's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God, is what he says. So that was pretty harsh, pretty hard, pretty negative, and it made me think, if someone were to ask you to characterize the New Testament, is it more positive or more negative? What would you say? You'd say more positive? Is it more encouraging or more discouraging? Encouraging? Actually, I wish somebody would do a study on it. But I think that it is way weighted toward being encouraging. And I think it's way weighted toward being positive. This what we have is a positive message. It's an encouraging message. It can be preached in a way, and it can be taught in a way that makes it feel like that it's always condemning and always after you about something. And it's very dangerous for us to approach the Bible that way, or to pick out that kind of language and keep talking about it. Because how many young people have grown up that you can think of, and they've heard that kind of message over and over and over again, and they finally get to the point that they can't stand it anymore. They don't want to hear that kind of message all the time. Can you think of anyone that's done that? Walked away? Yeah, a lot of them.
I think it's a state of mind when you're thinking about it, with your mindset, when your mood, it kind of fluctuates a little bit.
Yeah. I think it is a state of mind also, and I think a state of mind is greatly influenced by what we focus on. And so if you keep focusing on that which is negative and that which is always wrong with me, then what you focus on grows. And it becomes so big as a problem that you just finally throw up your hands and say, can't do it. Well, I want you to watch what he does here at the end of chapter 10. After he's been so very difficult and so very straightforward on, if you walk away, look how God's going to feel about this. It's going to be an ugly thing if you walk away. But now he says, in verse 32, remember those earlier days after you had received the light, when you stood your ground in a great contest in the face of suffering? Now, what does it mean, remember those earlier days? What kind of message is that?
When you first came to the light.
When you first came to Christ, remember those earlier days? So if I'm talking to you about your marriage, and I say, you know, I know you're got gray hair now, and I know you can't walk as fast now, and I know, remember the earlier days. What was it like? What does that do for you? I mean, Susan and I last night, drove over to Luther, where her grandparents lived all those many years. And as we drove the road over there, we kept pointing out things that we remember and we saw, because when we were early married, we would go to Luther a lot from Stillwater on weekends, because I would shortcut by going there on Friday night so I could get up not quite so early and be at Chief Freight Lines to work the freight docks all day Saturday. I could make more money in one day on Saturday on the freight docks than I could working 2 weeks at the school. And I did both. I worked at the school, but I also worked the freight docks and thought I was getting rich. But I had to be there really early. Like, I had to be standing in line at 6 o'clock so the checkers would look at me and point at me and say, "You got a job." If they don't point, you don't get a job. So you work really, really hard. You keep your head down and you don't do anything but work and run. They'll keep pointing at you. But we'd spent all this time in Luther. And so we went back and we were recalling our what? Our earlier days. And Sue said, as we're driving back, I wonder if the Dairy Queen is still there, where we used to stop and get those peanut buster parfaits. Well, it wasn't still there as we went back into Edmond. But we're recalling the earlier days. And what does that do? It kind of invigorates you. It puts energy back into you. I want you to recall the younger days when you were first enlightened, when you first received the light. And I want you to think about how you stood your ground in that great contest in the face of suffering. It's one of Satan's tools. He has many. But one of his tools is suffering. It's suffering. You read what Peter says as he writes. He's writing to how you and I live in this life. And we live a life that's difficult. But he says, instead of looking at suffering and difficulty as, oh my, me, and how hard this is, he said, look at what Christ did for us and take a different attitude. I had a young man this morning. He about once a month, he wants me to meet with him just to visit with him. So on Wednesday mornings, once a month, we meet at Panera Bread at 8:15. And we only met for 45 minutes this morning. But he was talking to me about this very thing, about how we've been called to live differently. And he was encouraging, and he was, it was just a good talk. It was good for me to hear him talk. Sometimes you were publicly exposed to insult and you're persecuted. At other times you stood side by side with those who were so treated. You sympathized with those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the confiscation of your property because you knew that you yourselves had something better and lasting. Wow. How would you feel about that? They confiscated my property. They put people in prison. They persecuted in other ways. They insulted. But do you remember when you were back there in those days, you stood side by side with them. You stood your ground. And you were there to help them. And you were there to share with them. And think about how strong you were. Think about the vitality you had in Christ. Now, is he being negative or positive? He's being positive. He's being positive. He's saying, this is what you were like when you became a part of the kingdom. This is how you lived as a kingdom person. And I know that now time has taken its toll. Now that's just something you need to pause and think about for a moment. Time does take its toll on what? What's the word that comes out on what? Sue said everything. That is exactly right. Time takes its toll on every single thing. It takes its toll on my strength. It takes its toll on the way I look. I just detest the summertime. Not because I'm hot so much, I don't like the heat, but in the wintertime I can cover more of this up. I mean, I just look better when I cover more of it up. Because time has taken its toll. And time takes its toll on my vehicles. Have you noticed that? And time takes its toll on my health. It's rare. It's rare that we stand up in the pulpit and announce somebody's sickness, Gideon's age. In fact, we've never talked about Gideon's health one time, have we? And all the time you've been here, we never talked about your health one time. Oh, maybe when you had a little bit of football injury, but you know, why don't we talk about his health problem? Because look how old he is. You know, it's just different. Time takes its toll on everything. And sadly, it takes its toll on relationships at times. Even the most basic, most critical relationship of all, marriage, it can take its toll. Can it? And so he's saying, I know what's happened to all of you. You just grown weary in well-doing. You just grown weary with all this. But go back and think about how it used to be. And think about how strong you used to be. You were acting like Superman right here. And the reason why you knew it was because you were so certain about the lasting possessions that God had placed in heaven for you and even here for you. It was almost like you were glad. You're glad to stand wherever God put you to stand. So here's the deal. Don't throw away your confidence. Don't throw it away right now. You may be a little tired. You may be a little weary. Time may have taken its toll, but don't throw it away right now. If you'll keep hold of it, you'll be richly rewarded. You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what He's promised. What does the word persevere mean to you? It's exactly, just keep on marching. When I feel like I can't take another step, I keep what? I just keep putting my other foot in front of me. I just keep trying to go. And I know that's easier to talk about than it is to do. I know it's sometimes not very easy to do, but that's what we've been called to do. Just stick with it. For in just a little while, He who is coming will come and will not delay. Now, I know that bothers us. This is the way the New Testament talks all the time. In fact, Sunday morning, the last part of the book of Hebrews will be about that very thing. He who is coming will come, and it won't be very long. So look at how you're living. Be ready for it, type thing. But my righteous one will live by faith. And if he shrinks back, I will not be pleased with him. But we're not of those people who shrink back. We're not a shrink back people. We're not a retreat people. Remember the old story in Exodus chapter 14? I always have this story in my mind, or at least I frequently have it in my mind, that they're at the Red Sea, and the people are disgusted. And not only are they disgusted, they're panicked because all they can see is a bunch of water, and they don't know how to get across the water. And all they can see behind them is Pharaoh and his chariots, and they know Pharaoh was really angry. And so these defenseless people, they think they're defenseless, become panicked and afraid. And it's one of the brightest spots of Moses' leadership. One of the brightest spots. Because you know what the people are calling for? When they get in a pinch like that, you know what the people are calling for? You know what their word is? Their word is retreat. Their word is retreat. Let us go back. Would we be better? Moses, what have you done to us? It would be better for us to be making bricks in Egypt. At least we had food to eat. At least we weren't going to get killed. We made bricks in Egypt be better for us than to come out here and die like this. And Moses will stand up and say, be calm, just stand still. Now, that's called leadership presence. And sometimes when people are scared to death, leaders have to stand up and say, it's going to be okay. But I absolutely love the next verse. Because while Moses is standing up and looking like he's got the greatest confidence in the world, saying, stand still, be calm, see what God's going to do. You almost get this picture by looking at the next verse, verse 15, as though Moses is crawled over behind a rock somewhere and is saying to God, what in the world do we do? You know, I've told him to be calm, but what do we do next? And God says, why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to go forward. I love it. One wants to retreat. One saying, stand still for a moment. And God says, go forward. Just take that piece of wood you got in your hand and touch the water and get across that water. Go forward. And that's what he says. We're not of those who retreat. We're not of those who run. We don't turn and walk away. We stand. We're not of those who shrink back and are destroyed. We're of those who believe, who truly believe and are saved. Ain't that powerful? Isn't that powerful? Just think back how strong you used to be in Christ. Think about what it was like when you were babies in Christ. You were fearless. You had all this confidence. And don't shrink back. That's not who we are. And now, he's introduced this concept of belief. And we have one of the most exciting chapters in the entire Bible facing us. We are filled right in a little while here. Chapter 11, chapter 12. I'm telling you, the book of Hebrews doesn't get any better anywhere in the New Testament than these two chapters. This is what we're like. So, the lesson is, it's a bad thing to give up, but God says in a positive way through this writer, whoever this writer is, you hang on. You just keep on going because you're going to get richly rewarded. Everything God promised is going to come true.